The post this week is Fake Justification is the first one. I didn't pull out very much from this one. So I was thinking maybe I just read the one thing I did pull out and you guys can talk more about things that you thought or pulled out or whatever.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. Basically, Fake Justification is yelling at clouds, telling people not to say that they have justified something when they didn't actually really justify it at all. They already had a preconceived notion. Very similar to writing the bottom line that we talked about a few months ago. The quote I pulled out was, "Many Christians who've stopped really believing now insist that they revere the Bible as a source of ethical advice. The standard atheist replies given by Sam Harris, you and I both know that it would take us 5 minutes to produce a book that offers a more coherent and compassionate morality than the Bible does. Similarly, one may try to insist that the Bible is valuable as a literary work, then why not revere Lord of the Rings, a vastly superior literary work?" And that was basically his example of, people are trying to justify why they still like the Bible with all this other stuff, like it's got ethical frameworks or it's got good literary value, and that's obviously not their real justification, because when you examine it for even 5 minutes, you're like, this is complete bullshit.
I have to say, I think it's a fascinating anthropological book. I wouldn't say that it's a very good piece of literature.
No.
In fact, it's a really boring and sometimes completely baffling piece of literature. I tried to read, or I didn't try to, I did in fact read the entire thing, and then all the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Really?
I took a Bible as literature class, and as part of my literature track in college.
Oh,
but
cool.
It was a requirement, but also I was kind of psyched to do it because that was during sort of the beginning of the New Atheist period for me, and I was like, I've never actually read the Bible cover to cover. I'm gonna really give it a fair shake and see if it convinces me. What if I read this and it convinces me? Maybe there's some really awesome gems of wisdom, some nuggets that I haven't just been able to pick up now. No.
No.
There was a lot of animal sacrifice.
Yes. I'm frequently surprised by as someone who in the Jehovah's Witness religion, they regularly read large parts of the Bible, and I just assumed everyone had some background Bible knowledge. So I was for a long time frequently surprised by people who read the Bible for the first time and saw how kind of dumb and hokey it was. And I'm like, how did you not know this? It's your holy book, or it's the holy book of the culture you've been raised in for 20 years. And they're like, I don't know, I just assumed it was profound and well written. And I'm like, okay, could have read some of it.
I think that is still a remarkably common thing, and some people will, they can cite passages or something and say, yeah, that and there are gems to be found for sure, mm-hmm. But you got to dig through a mountain of foreskins to find them. And it's like Harris in the Harris quote, we could offer a more comprehensive and succinct morality if that's what you're looking for. But I guess if I had to bring up anything about this post Fake Justification, I'm curious how it's different from the bottom line.
I don't know. It feels very similar to me. Maybe this one has more emphasis on the faking justifications than the bottom lining aspect.
That's fair.
It's just kind of taking it from another angle.
Yeah, I like Dinash's answer. Maybe it's more about the titles.
No, it's when one metaphor fails to land, a different one could totally explain the same thing. Not very articulate. We were just at a cool party. But Phoenix was explaining some programming stuff. Phoenix is a web developer, teacher for basically the Russian Google. They're called Yandex. And I did I was a fake student yesterday because they had to practice for starting their next cohort and explaining the first project. And it was actually really interesting because I had actually done the first project before, but they changed it. So I wasn't familiar with the subject material. So it was I was a real student almost. And so I was as a student, I'm not sure what this terminology is. If I'm somebody totally new to, and it's just really funny seeing what somebody who, I guess this is actually much more inferential distances, but it was interesting seeing can you explain that again slightly differently? No, I'm still not getting it. Can you explain that again slightly different? And it's the third time, that metaphor totally clicks. And now all the previous ones make sense in the light of that one. So it might just be, I think some of the sequences are revisiting the same material for that reason, just exploring them more, creating a better model.
Yeah, no, it rounds out the picture more. And I think too, if I try to zoom out, the difference between bottom line thinking and fake justifying is that you can bottom line reason and come up with a bunch of true statements that you actually believe to support the bottom line, right? But if you're using fake justifications, you've got your bottom line, but you can just fill the top of the page with bullshit. And maybe that's, if there's any difference, maybe that's the difference. Because he mentioned Sam Harris in this post, and sometime in the last couple of days, he came out with an episode with this awesome doctor guest he's had on before about vaccine hesitancy. And it's really, it's the amicable, like, not middle of the road, because he takes a very, very firm stance, but like reaching across, like trying to be open and understanding Sam Harris that I like.
Trying to actually understand people and why they're doing these things.
Yeah, I think he understands them, but I think he's trying to make it so, like, if they're listening, they won't actually just be turned off and say, "Okay, you're a shill, fuck you."
And so the audience could understand, I guess, probably. Like, there's something I think really useful to having a figure like Sam Harris or other people who really go out of their way to do basically like street epistemology style interviews or explorations, I think.
I absolutely agree. I mean, if all you're hearing is people giving a presentation of your opinion that is not doing your opinion justice, you're like, okay, they're not even entertaining the actual arguments I have. Draw your inferences from that. Either they can't, or they're too dumb to understand it, or whatever. If they're actually engaging with what you actually think, and in Dan Dennett's words, if they can put it in such a way where you're like, "Thank you, I wish I'd phrased it that way," then at least you really know that, hey, you know what? They actually get me. They're not just talking down to me. I mean, imagine if all of the pro-evolution stuff you'd ever heard came from the people pushing intelligent design, right? Like they would give you, oh, well, they think, your grandparents were apes. You've met your grandparents. They're not apes. So obviously that's full of shit, right? Like that. So that must be what it feels like if you're on the wrong side of an issue, and all you get is being told, yeah, you're an idiot and you're gullible and you're, all those things. So having somebody give you the principle of charity and actually reach out, I think does worlds of wonders. So
I was just realizing when Stephen, you were talking about that I was nodding along because I'm like, yeah, I've totally watched YouTube videos, listened to podcasts or whatever, and just turned them off when it's like some conservative person or some religious person, or I don't know, somebody that has like different views than mine, who's totally not even trying to, not even steel man, but not even like aluminum man. Like they're just, like, yeah, these idiots think this thing, and then obviously they're wrong. And it's like, what? Okay.
I believe the term you're looking for is straw man.
I think it is.
Which was the trope originator of steel man.
I know. Well, I realized that as I was saying it, and then I was like, there's a word for this. Anyway.
Well, I think that you can do something in the middle where you're pretending to give a charitable version of the opposition, but you're not really. So like you can have the straw man. It's like, so that, they say your grandparents were apes, but that's obviously not true. That's the straw man. And then they're like, well, they say that all of life is, just in a few million years descended from each other. But, we never observed change in the wild. That never happened. You've never seen
there
that,
are no
right?
Fossils.
Right. Like, so that's almost more
lying.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. I'm trying to find, there's somewhere between straw and.
But no, I have heard the weak man argument where you take the absolute worst example of the other side and pretend that that's like the normal example.
Yeah. Like you find like some really outspoken idiot on YouTube who happens to be for that cause and is like, look, this is what they all think. And you're like,
exactly. Yeah.
No.
Actually, well, we all hate that person.
Or like, Stalin was an atheist. And so all atheists are like Stalin. You're like, no, there's a good reason why you can't round up Stalin to all atheists.
But I realized that I haven't seen very many examples, and maybe they exist, of people on like the other side of rationality. Maybe they don't, but like trying to do that same thing. I'd actually be really curious if listeners have recommendations for, cause I'm really interested in like kind of actually listening to what the other side of things. I realize that that's really vague, but I think as a community, we tend to, be for effective altruism and for like researching AI and making it safe. And just, there's some standard positions. I haven't seen a really good example of somebody steel manning our position, but then still arguing against it.
I think depending on like how you draw the line or the circle around what is rationality. Basically, I would just, if someone's doing a really good job, I just include them in the circle, right? I can imagine somebody making a really sane case against, I don't know. I mean, I guess I'm trying to think of like non-settled issues, but like Julia Galef's The Scout Mindset, she talks with a lot of people in the book, and then she did a series of podcast episodes that were basically Scout Mindset in action, trying to figure out, like kind of just like an innocuous question, like that's not politically charged. Like, would it be bad if Uber made their employees, or was required by law to make all of their drivers employees? Like, what would the fallout of that be, and is that good or bad? So should grab an expert advocate on either side and talk to each of them individually, and she's uncertain, which is the best place to approach these questions from.
In fact, purchased this book and have not read it yet, so maybe thanks for the recommendation. I'm going to check that out.
Yeah, you bet. The book was good. I was talking about in the Rationally Speaking podcast, the last 6 or so episodes have been about things like that.
The thing about rationality is yes, it is also kind of like a movement and a culture, which we are pretty active in, but it's not just that. Like, core basic rationality is more of a method. It's a technique of finding the truth. So there's a lot of people that aren't in what we consider our culture at all, but like when you talk to them, they're using the same basic techniques, and I basically consider them rationalists in spirit, even if they aren't, they don't consider themselves rationalists. I personally wouldn't call them rationalists because it comes with some other identity stuff, sort of. But they're close enough that it's talking to a rationalist. They're a rational person, and that makes it like you said, Stephen. If you find someone that strongly disagrees with you on a lot of these things, but they're still using the techniques of trying to find evidence and making their own thinking logically coherent, and the various methods of rationality, that you're like, yeah, okay, that I basically include you in the circle of rationalism, even if you don't identify as a rationalist, right? So
the analogy to martial arts works really well. If one nation state has been doing a certain style for 1,000 years, and they find another population of people on the other side of the planet who can fight really well, but aren't doing the same kinds of techniques, well, they're still martial artists.
Yeah. I mean, the closest I can think of is that there's some people who not only are in the rationalism circle, but who explicitly identify as rationalists, who have a strong belief in an actual Christian God. And I think they're very weird, and it almost seems like by definition they can't be rationalists then, but everything else they do is very rationalist. I'm like, okay, I guess they're basically rationalists with this one glaring blind spot that I suppose I can just accept. I
think we all have our glaring blind spots, though. It's just much more noticeable when it's something that we're already primed to be like, that's fake.
Well, when it's something as obvious as God, too,
That's what I'm saying. Anyway, let's see.
If anyone sees my glaring blind spots, this has been an open offer for years on the show. Just point them out to me. I want to know about them.
Well, you haven't given me nearly enough money, Stephen.
To what? Point out your glaring blind spot? Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Measure my thetan, or wait, Thetan?
The Thetan level.
Yeah.
That's right. The Scientologist had me for a week, and now I'm all about getting people's Thetan levels up by giving me money. Or down? Do they want Thetan levels to go up or down?
They want them exactly at the right level.
Okay.
I don't know.
Because Thetans are like the bad aliens that telepathically take control of you or something. Is that right? I don't know.
I think we've gotten way off topic at this point.
Well, we can zoom out and look at, because we talked about evolution a bit, and that was deliberate because it ties into the next post on an alien god.
Yes, which is one of my favorite posts.
It's so good.
I actually have done this one in audio before, so we can link the audio in this podcast as well, so people can listen to the whole thing if they would prefer that to reading it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
This is my favorite reading of yours of a sequence post.
Oh, well, thank you.
I listened to it a bunch of times. I also listened to the one where you were doing the rationalist short stories, where one of them I think was Use the Try Harder, Luke.
Yes, that was good.
This one and those were my favorites.
Yeah.
So, right, well, what's an alien god?
An alien god is talking about evolution and the fact that there appears to be purposefulness in nature. But if you start looking at it in more detail, it doesn't quite fit because foxes seem well designed to catch rabbits, and rabbits seem well designed to evade foxes. But like that doesn't make sense. Was the creator having trouble making up its mind?
Whose side is he on?
Yeah.
Which one is good and which is evil?
When I design a toaster oven, I don't design one part that tries to get electricity to the coils and a second part that tries to prevent electricity from getting to the coils. It would be a waste of effort. So he points out that the ecosystem would make much more sense if it wasn't designed by a single who, but by a horde of deities.
This is always a compelling thing that, and this is where I, like during my New Atheism argument years, I would kind of like, this would be like my meet in the middle with religious people. And I'd be like, look, the argument for a conflicting pantheon is way more compelling than the argument for a single intelligent deity, right?
What would they say?
It would vary. I mean, it's been so long. I imagine some answers were something along the lines of like, well, you just don't understand the mystery. We can't understand it. Obviously, the idea of tons of gods is insane, and you're ridiculous for entertaining it. So it's things like that. But I do feel like that's a nice meet in the middle spot, even if it's not one I actually believe. It's like, okay, look, you think it's 1. I think it's 0. Like, let's pick a third and just say it's a bunch. That also explains the evidence a little better than your position, and it answers the questions that you're thinking I can't answer with my 0 answers. So
yeah. Why does God really?
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, why does God really care about, the speed of light never being exceeded, but also really cares about having butt sex? Like, it seems like this is 2 very different gods we're talking about.
That always was really funny. This God that you posit cares about really specific things that seem to be strongly related to being a sheep herder in Bronze Age Israel.
How weird.
Specifically?
Yes, he says, we already know the punchline. What is the answer to all this purposefulness? You just say evolution. And he goes on to say, I worry that's how some people are absorbing the scientific explanation as a magical purposefulness factory in nature. Evolution doesn't allow just any kind of purposefulness to leak into nature. That's what makes it a success as an empirical hypothesis. If it could explain a toaster oven, not just a tree, it would be worthless. There's a lot more to evolutionary theory than pointing at nature and saying now purpose is allowed.
Yeah, this is one of those mini sequences that I felt like I wanted to just like fist pump, like, yeah, that.
Mm-hmm.
It was a thing I'd been trying to articulate, and then like a lot of the sequences, and then a lot of Slate Star Codex posts are just like, it's the thing I've been trying to explain. Read this. Mm-hmm. It's hard when it's Slate Star Codex and it's like an entire book length, but
right.
Evolution. One of the things that people run into, I guess, when you are trying to debate with theological people, is they think that if you support the theory of evolution, that means you worship the theory of evolution, because I guess they can't really like disentangle this is an explanation for this versus this is the thing that we believe, and believe with a capital B means you've got to like go to mass and say that it's great and stuff. Evolution's terrible.
Yeah.
And this sequence goes like more into detail about that, but it's the same system that lets elephants live to old age because it's like biologically advantageous to have grandparents, but not for too long, so their teeth all fall out, so they slowly starve to death, but they help the reproductive fitness of their grandchildren, so it's fine.
Yeah,
fuck that God.
He points out, what would it cost evolution, or the evolution of elephants, because he said there's as many different evolutions as there are reproducing populations, to ensure that the elephant just dies right away when the teeth fall out instead of slowly and in agony. The elephant won't reproduce more or less anyway.
Or just like has some kind of natural Novocaine type thing get pumped through its entire body after it gets to a certain age. Because like, if there were any kind of intelligence behind this process, it's like, okay, it's advantageous to have the grandparents, and then like they're going to slowly deteriorate and die, and it's going to be miserable. Maybe we could just start pumping out the painkillers and make them really high until the ends of their lives. Nah, that wouldn't be efficient.
I mentioned that on the most recent episode of the Not Everything is a Clue podcast we're doing. And if I was God for a day, it would be a really good day for animals. The second that the gazelle is tackled and it's getting bitten into, then suddenly it's just got a euphoric rush of, not some external input of morphine or something, because it need to be like invisible and indetectable, but something just turns off, like it no longer is aware of the pain, or it just, its consciousness disappears.
Becomes a pea zombie gazelle.
Yeah, and so then for like the last minute that it's being ripped apart, it's no one's suffering.
Had you recently read this post just before we recorded?
No.
No, okay, just a thing on your mind anyway.
Yeah, I guess so. The unfairness of like what a shit deal on the drive back from Colorado Springs, we're talking about the human condition and stuff like this related to humans, but the shit deal that animals have always gotten from this. I never got over the example of the Echumenidae wasp, which I think was the main thing that pushed Darwin towards his agnosticism. And it lays its larvae in a paralyzed caterpillar, and then the larvae will hatch and will eat the organs of the caterpillar in the order that it takes, or in the order that leaves the caterpillar alive for the longest as possible. And no doubt it hurts the caterpillar. I mean, I hope it doesn't. But if caterpillars can feel pain, no doubt it's an agony, and that's fucked up. So
unfortunately, it seems like most things can feel pain because it's really good for your reproductive fitness.
Yeah, if you're not aware it hurts, then you don't know to get away from it. So that seems like thing number 2 or 3 on the list of things you need to have some genetic fitness.
But that is all part of what he says. He ties this back to the previous post of faking justification, like all this stuff we're talking about. He's saying human beings fake their justifications, figuring out what they want using one method and then justifying it using another method. There's no evolution of elephants theory that's trying to figure out what's best for elephants and then B, figure out how to justify it to an evolution overseer who C, doesn't want to see reproductive fitness decreased, but is D, willing to go along with the painless death idea so long as it doesn't actually harm any genes. But it turns out there's no advocate for elephants anywhere in the system.
There should be advocates for elephants.
Well, yeah.
I think that's
if the system had, if the system was listening, then someone could argue for it. But instead, we just have to take over the system, right?
Yeah.
We'll make it. We'll make the universe a less suffering place.
Yeah. Yeah, he says we tend to rationalize reasons why our design improvements would increase reproductive fitness. But it turns out we are simply the embodied history of which organisms did, in fact, survive and reproduce, not which organisms ought prudentially to have survived and reproduced. It's very much a descriptive thing rather than a prescriptive thing.
Like water flowing downhill and equally benevolent.
Yes.
Which is to say, what do you mean benevolent?
Yeah. So he goes into the gods thing here, which is where the post really just like starts touching all my emotional "this is awesome" buttons, like Jace was saying with the fist pumping. He says, "If we ask who is more correct, just 2.5 more months of having these fucking condoms on my teeth, and then I can talk right again." He says, if we ask who is more correct, the theologians who argued for a creator god or the intellectually unfulfilled atheists who argued that mice spontaneously generated, then the theologians must be declared the victors. Evolution is not God, but it is closer to God than it is to pure random entropy. And he says that Damien Broderick said gods are ontologically distinct from creatures, or they're not worth the paper they're written on. And indeed, the shaper of life is not itself a creature. Evolution is bodiless, like the Judeo-Christian deity, omnipresent in nature, imminent in the fall of every leaf, vast as a planet's surface, billions of years old, itself unmade, arising naturally from the structure of physics. Doesn't that sound like something that might have been said about God? Which that's basically everything we've heard about God before, right?
Yeah, and it sort of ties into that whole, like, even some people who are pro-science sort of get this awe and want to worship evolution. Like, you see people excitedly saying the word evolution or wearing a shirt that says it, and there's like a bunch of video games, Pokemon comes to mind, where they glorify evolution as this just making things better process, which it is not.
No.
But it does certainly sound terrifying and omnipresent and omnipotent and whatnot.
Awesome in the old original version of the word.
Yeah, like inspiring awe. And the maker has no mind.
Yes.
You want to do it? You do it better than me.
Oh, okay. And yet the maker has no mind as well as no body. In some ways, its handiwork is incredibly poor design by human standards. It is internally divided. Most of all, it isn't nice. In a way, Darwin discovered God, a God that failed to match the preconceptions of theology, and so passed unheralded. Darwin discovered a strange alien God, not comfortably ineffable, but really genuinely different from us. Evolution is not a god, but if it were, it wouldn't be Jehovah. It would be H.P. Lovecraft's Azathoth, the blind idiot god burbling chaotically at the center of everything, surrounded by the thin, monotonous piping of flutes, which you might have predicted if you had really looked at nature.
Seriously.
Fucking fantastic. Yeah. I love this post.
I was one of those animal kids. I still am. I have 3 geckos. But I was like the kid with like the bug catcher. I went to my sister's soccer game one time and came back having caught a fish, and my dad was like, "What the fuck?" I was like, "Oh, I noticed that there's a lake in the middle of the woods if you walk far enough back." So I got a hook and a string and
my god,
a fucking bug catcher and filled it with water. And it's like, yeah, okay.
Congratulations, that's awesome.
I mean, they were long, boring soccer games, but like, if you look at nature, it's really terrible. It doesn't seem to be like very much fun for anybody involved. Even top predators are just like, even top predators are stressed out all the time. They mentioned rattlesnakes early on in this, where they said some people used to think that rattlesnakes evolved a rattle for the benefit of the things that are trying to avoid a rattlesnake, but that's ridiculous. And I was reminded of something I learned. We have rattlesnakes here. I see them a bit. They don't want to bite you. They really don't want to bite you. They will do everything in their power. Like they'll rattle a lot. They'll make a ton of threat poses. But their venom, even though like it's excessive for the size of the thing they're trying to kill, they need it to kill their prey. So they need to ration it. So like things don't fuck with rattlesnakes generally, but then like if they do, like as a rattlesnake, you have to be like, okay, I have to ration my venom.
Yeah.
I have to, like worry about things stepping on me unnecessarily, and then I pump my venom into them, and then maybe they still kill me anyway because I'm a snake and I could die easily. But like this thing will die, but it'll take a few minutes.
Right.
And now I've got no venom.
Every altercation you get in is another chance for injury or death. I learned that's one of the reasons predators, they don't really like going up against things that can harm them. They're always going for the weak or the young or, things that won't put up much of a fight. Yeah. Because every single time they want to eat, they have to go and risk being, killed in the process or, maimed, injured some other way that's going to give them permanent disability in life. I mean, obviously they aren't thinking of it that way, but the way it shakes out is that, they prefer not to get in beefs. So if you can just make yourself look really big and scary, they'll be like, oh, yeah, I'm gonna go find a baby human instead. That'll be less of a fight.
Most things don't like humans. I think we don't taste very good or have very much meat, and we're annoying. There's also animals like the shrew or like badgers that just pound for pound are like they know no fear. Because they know that like a tiny shrew is like the size of your finger, but an owl will try to attack it and it'll just go, that's what you think, motherfucker. I'm going to bite you. I'm going to bite. And they're like, I'm going to go find a mouse or something because this thing's insane and it's going to scratch me and then it'll get infected and then I'll die. You could just get a little scratch. Like it's a shrew. You could kill it very easily. But if it's just snapping at the air furiously, it's like, that's really bitey. Gotta find something less bitey. Yeah. So anyway, nature's terrible.
Most of human civilization has been the trying to beat nature into submission, make it a little less terrible.
Yeah, that's another interesting shift that has happened. I find it interesting that like even the Bible is like very and sort of religious cultures that came up from the Bible, they have that like humans are the emperors of the earth. Like it's for us, God made it for us, and we're supposed to like subdue it. And in fact, it's morally right to cut down trees and to sow crops and to like domesticate cattle. And now as we're developing more of a conscience as a species, like, oh, these practices are destroying the planet. Maybe this is not good. It's like, oh, we dominated nature too hard. Fuck.
Well, I mean, nature was always the terrible thing that was trying to kill us, and now we've dominated it. So it still is sometimes. Yeah. Now we've dominated so much that we're like, oh shit, we're throwing out some of the balances we need to actually support the Earth life support system. Yeah.
Anyway, I like the very last sentence here. I don't know though was there more stuff to get into before that?
Stephen?
No, I'm glad there's an audio version of this because anyone who can listen to this can find that one, and it's definitely worth reading in its entirety. So short of trying to read the whole thing, I think we can summarize and jump to the last part.
Yeah. It's hard to really do the whole thing justice. Like, we love it, but read it or listen to it. It's great in its totality. Better than just us talking about it.
So it ends with, well, more power to us humans. I like having a creator I can outwit. Beats being a pet. Glad it was Azathoth and not Odin. Which, yes. I mean, at least like Odin would be a god that you could be like, yeah, kill that god. Where like kill that nature has turned out not so great for us, actually. Mm-hmm. There's lots of like carbon emissions and stuff going on and plastic in the ocean. And we're like, yeah, we beat it. Oh, now everything's a lot shittier to live in. Well, crap.
That does assume that you could. Yeah, that does assume that you could kill that god at all. Like Steve and me are, as he said. Yeah, we're reading through Worth the Candle in the Not Everything is a Clue podcast. And, one of the things in it is that there appears to be some sort of god and he's like outside of the universe. And I don't know if there's any possible way one could kill that god in the same way that, as we've said before, there's no way Kratos in God of War could kill any of us playing while we're playing the game.
We're humans. We're really good at killing things. I'm optimistic.
I wouldn't put it beyond, like, if it was an actual real god it could be literally unkillable. I still think it would be a thing we should try to do because it would be good and maybe we can. But, we have to face the fact that it's possible it might actually be unkillable.
Well, not with that attitude.
Not that we shouldn't try, though. Yeah, right. We will never find out unless we try and keep trying.
Well, these are all fictional examples. We don't actually have a god that we've been able to discern, so...
Thank God.
Well, thank God there is no god. Yes. Wasn't that bus slogan that made people mad?
I don't remember.
I think so. That was like a Richard Dawkins Foundation sort of thing. That rings a bell.
I think there was something very similar to like, thank God there is no god, or something that like some atheist foundation paid to put on the sides of buses and people got really mad.
Cool.
Yeah,
the good old days.
That sounds familiar.
All right. So for next week, we are going to be reading The Wonder of Evolution, which sounds like the exact opposite of the horror of evolution we've been talking about. And also, evolutions are stupid, but work anyway. Those are our posts for next time.